I'm Dawn Hill, host of Heart, Mind, and Purpose, a podcast where we explore what it means to live an aligned and wholehearted life. I am a professional counselor with over 25 years of experience and a deep love for meaningful conversation. I bring you honest reflections, soulful questions, and meaningful tools for managing life. Whether you're seeking clarity, connection, or simply a space to breathe, this podcast is here for you. Tune in weekly and join me on the journey.
Welcome to Heart, Mind, and Purpose, the podcast where we explore how inner lives shape the way we love, connect, and grow. Hi, this is Paul Gramercy, producer of today's episode, where Dawn unpacks one of the most talked about topics in relationships, boundaries. What are they really? Why do we need them? And how do they help us build healthier connections without losing ourselves? Whether you've struggled to set limits, felt drained by overgiving, or wondered if boundaries are just another buzzword, this conversation will give you clarity, encouragement, and practical ways to make boundaries work in your everyday life. This one's called Boundaries, What They Are and Why They Matter. Now here's your host, Dawn Hill.
Today we are diving into a topic that gets talked about a lot, boundaries. Maybe you've heard the word so many times that it feels like a buzzword, or maybe you've thought, everyone keeps telling me I need boundaries, but what does that actually mean? If you've ever wondered why boundaries matter, how to set them, or even what they are and are not, this episode is for you, because the truth is many people either don't know how to set boundaries, don't know how to communicate them, or feel stuck when their limits are crossed, leaving them feeling used, disrespected, or invisible in their own lives. So today we'll unpack what boundaries really are, why they matter, and how they shape healthier, safer, and more meaningful connections. So here are a few definitions of boundaries. One is that it's a line that marks the limit of an area, a dividing line. In psychology, boundaries are the invisible lines or limits we establish to protect our physical, emotional, and mental well-being. They define what we're comfortable with and what we will not tolerate. In relationships, boundaries are guidelines that clarify our values, protect our well-being, and define what behaviors are acceptable to us. They are not about controlling others. They are about deciding what you will do and communicating that with clarity and respect. In short, boundaries protect your sense of self while allowing healthy connection with others. Without them, relationships can slide into unhealthy patterns like enmeshment, and that's when closeness blurs into over-involvement and individuality gets lost, or we could leave space for boundary breakers, the people who ignore or push past your limits. So let's look at a few key aspects of boundaries. First, there are physical boundaries. These relate to the physical space and touch, such as how close someone is allowed to get or what kind of physical contact is acceptable to you. Emotional boundaries, these define how an individual expresses and manages their emotions, including what emotions they are willing to share with others and how they handle emotional stress or distress. There are thought boundaries. These establish what an individual is willing to think about or believe, such as what topics they are comfortable discussing and what beliefs they will not compromise on. For example, in Philippians 4:8, Paul writes, "Summing it all up, friends, I'd say you'll do best by filling your minds and meditating on things that are true, noble, reputable, authentic, compelling, gracious, the best, not the worst, the beautiful, not the ugly, things to praise, not things to curse." That's the Message translation. So here's an example from my life when I would think about how you actually practice this verse, thinking about these things and how that would really look. One day I just had this thought while I was sitting on my couch and I was kind of anxious about something, I don't know what, but I just remember thinking, how am I going to stop thinking about that and thinking about the things that are lovely and gracious and compelling? And I just felt like I heard this word in my head, go to the window. So I did. I went over to my living room window and I looked out. And outside there was grass and trees, all sorts of trees, oak trees, pecan trees, different kinds of oak trees. There were just quite a few trees and a lot of grass. And I just remember thinking wow, this is amazing. Look at this grass. I think this grass is all, monocots or maybe dicots. I don't know. I should go out and look. And then I started thinking about the trees I was seeing and the grass, and I was thinking about the planet and how big it is and how there's different types of grass in different areas. The grass in Texas is not the same grass that's in Canada. That's not the same grass that's maybe in Finland or, areas of Africa or over in China or the Himalayas. There's grass, different kinds of grass, as well as there are different types of trees for each terrain. The deciduous trees in my yard are not the same kind of trees that grow in the Amazon rainforest. They have different root systems for different reasons. And I just started thinking about just the creativity of grass and trees and the whole planet and how the right trees fit in the right areas and the right grasses for the right areas. And I won't even get started on soil. But what it led me to was this thought. And I said to myself, Dawn, if God can create this, all the different kinds of these things, trees and grass alone, not to mention everything else, he probably has enough ability to help you with this thing that you've been fussing over. And it really did help me put this into application. For me, that's what worked for me. I went to the window and I looked at what was outside. There were also squirrels playing, and I think they're adorable. So it did help me be able to make this an applicable verse to help my mind to think about the things that I needed to, and not just to keep spinning and spinning in anxiety about something I didn't have control over. And I hope this example helps you. It may not be grass and trees for you, but it could be something else. The practical, the simple can help us think about the things that are beautiful and not the things that just worry us into a spiral. And finally, there are behavioral boundaries, and these set the limits on what actions an individual will or will not engage in, such as how they respond to certain behaviors or situations. So you might be thinking, well, what do boundaries actually do? Well, first of all, they protect your well-being. Boundaries act as a protective, invisible line that helps maintain your physical, emotional, and mental health. They reflect your values. They are based on your core beliefs and dictate what is important to you and how you are treated and how you interact with others. They define acceptable behavior. Boundaries clearly communicate what you consider appropriate and what you will not tolerate in a relationship, and they promote balance. Boundaries make room for both closeness and independence. They keep the relationship steady so each person can feel safe, valued, and respected. For example, Paul writes in Galatians 2:6, "Live creatively, friends. If someone falls into sin, forgivingly restore him, saving your critical comments for yourself. You might be needing some forgiveness before the day is out. Stoop down and reach out to those who are oppressed. Share their burdens, and so complete Christ's law. If you think you are too good for that, you're badly deceived." The Message. So how do boundaries work? Boundaries are about you. They are not about controlling someone else. So here is a recent example from my life. I have a 9-year-old grandson, and he has a classmate who is extremely loud. And this was very disrupting for him, and he didn't handle the experience very well. Then he talked with his parents, and he decided when the person was loud and bothering him that he would say to himself, "I'm just going to ignore that and go back to what I was doing." He understood he could not choose for his classmate. Instead, he would choose for himself, and he's so proud of this boundary he set, and it is helping him be around a classmate that was otherwise very hard for him to tolerate. His boundary is about what he could choose and had control of, and not trying to choose or control another. So boundaries do require us to communicate. You need to communicate your needs and limits clearly and respectfully to others. I like what it says in Colossians 4:6. Be gracious in your speech. The goal is to bring out the best in others in a conversation, not to put them down and not to cut them out. Boundaries are flexible. Some boundaries, like safety and trust, are not negotiable, but others can shift as the relationship grows. For example, with young children, you may need to know exactly where they are at all times. By the teen years, that shifts into curfews or check-ins. The boundary remains, but it adapts to the maturity of the child. And why are boundaries important? Well, they foster safety and security. When boundaries are honored, You feel understood, valued, and free to be yourself without fear of being overwhelmed. They build trust and respect. Clear boundaries create a stronger foundation for trust and mutual respect in a relationship. For example, in Matthew 5:7, we read, "All you need to say is simply yes or no." This is the heart of clear communication, or it is often paraphrased as, "Let your yes be yes and your no be no." When we live this out in our relationships, people know exactly where we stand. It is not vague, confusing, or sending mixed signals. It is steady, consistent, and dependable. They also prevent resentment. When our boundaries are crossed, it is easy to start feeling frustrated or resentful. Boundaries help protect against that by reminding us and others that our needs matter too. For example, if you always stay late at work but feel drained and unappreciated, setting a time boundary will help keep bitterness from building up in you. Boundaries also support self-care. Boundaries are a powerful form of self-care. They give you permission to make choices that support your health and peace of mind instead of running on empty. For example, saying no to another commitment so that you can rest is not selfish, it is wise. So, what boundaries are not? Sometimes when people first learn about boundaries, their pendulum swings too far in the other direction, like 180 degrees the other way. Instead of creating healthy limits, they build 40-foot walls that are rigid, impenetrable, even aggressive. These firewalls might keep people out, but they also create isolation and tension, often leading to conflict rather than connection. Healthy boundaries are not about shutting everyone out or controlling others. They are about choosing what is safe and respectful for you while still allowing room for healthy relationships to grow. A few examples might be, if you've been taken advantage of in past relationships, it might feel safer to cut everyone off completely. While understandable, that leaves no space for safe, supportive connections. Or with a trusted friend, your boundaries might be a little looser, so you share openly, knowing they'll respect your trust. Or with a coworker or family member who often crosses the lines, you may need clearer, firmer boundaries, like deciding certain topics are off limits. The key is learning to adjust your boundaries based on the relationship. This is really, really important. Boundaries should protect you and still leave space for safe, meaningful relationships. I'd like to talk just a little bit about enmeshment, which I mentioned earlier in the podcast. Enmeshment happens when boundaries are so blurred that it is hard to tell where one person ends and the other begins. Instead of healthy closeness, there's an over-involvement that leaves little room for individuality. A few examples are a parent who expects their teenager to share every detail of their life, treating privacy as disloyalty. Or two friends who feel really guilty making plans without each other. They're so enmeshed that they feel they can't make plans with others. And then there's the boundary breaker. A boundary breaker is someone who doesn't respect the limits you set, whether that's your time, your space, your privacy, or your values. Sometimes it's intentional, but most often it's just a pattern they've fallen into. Either way, it leaves you feeling unheard or even unsafe. And here are a few examples of boundary breaking. In Proverbs 25:17, we read, "When you find a friend, don't wear out your welcome. Showing up at all hours, he'll soon get fed up." Our current version of showing up at all hours is seen in overtexting, sometimes demanding and or most often expecting immediate responses. Other examples are, a partner insists on reading your text even though you've said that feels like a violation of trust. Or a friend keeps pushing you to go out late, even after you've explained that you need your evenings for rest. They're not listening and they're not valuing your boundaries. Now, here are a few examples of everyday boundary setting. Parent to child. A parent does everything for their child, even when the child can do it themselves. Then the child misses the chances to grow, and the parent ends up feeling drained. This is an example of enmeshment. In a romantic relationship, one partner feels pressured to always be available. Setting boundaries around your personal time strengthens trust and respect in the relationship. With a casual friend relationship, Say a friend keeps showing up unannounced. Asking them to plan ahead protects your time while keeping the friendship intact. In the workplace, a coworker gossips or pries. Choosing not to share your personal details keeps the relationship professional. And finally, with a past boundary breaker, if in your past relationships there were those who often ignored your limits, it may be tempting to wall off completely. Healthy boundaries let you stay open to new connections while protecting yourself by being clear about what you will and won't accept. Finally, you may be asking, how do I say no? Or can I even say no? I hear these questions all the time from people of every age, background, walk of life. The truth is, saying no is simple in theory, but often hard in practice. It takes time, it takes practice, and it takes courage. It is almost like building muscles at the gym. Think about it. Maybe someone asks you to do something you don't want to do, can't do, or that goes against your values. You want to say no, but the words just won't come out. For many people, that stuck feeling comes from childhood, where no was not allowed, or saying it got you into trouble. So now saying no can stir up feelings of rejection, abandonment, or conflict. That is why telling someone just say no isn't very helpful advice. For some, it's a skill they've never been allowed to practice, but there's good news. Healthy people with healthy boundaries respect a no. The ones who don't, who get angry, reject, or try to manipulate, are often the very people for whom you need boundaries most. So when I was 24, I remember one day putting the kids down for a nap, and I was sitting at the sewing machine and thinking about something, I couldn't tell you what, and I just realized in this moment that I could say no. Like that sentence came to my head, you could say no, and I just was stunned, and I sat there and I thought, what? I could say no? I mean, it's so surprising to me. And it's really sad that at 24, I was just realizing that I could say no, but it was like something I was never allowed to do. I mean, I could tell my children, no, don't do that if it was going to be harmful to them, but to say no to someone else, I was so filled with fear of rejection, or it was people pleasing, and there was a lot of things around that. But I just remember standing up and walking around like in a circle in the living room, practicing and saying to myself, I could say no. I could say no. Me? I could say no. I was just stunned by it and sat with it and thought, of course I could say no. And practicing it over time, I would learn the art of how to set boundaries, how they look, how they sound, and it was transformative. So if you feel stuck or you've never had permission, you can learn to say no. The bottom line is learning to say no is part of healthy living. It helps us attract people who respect us, share our values, want relationships built on mutual care. Over time, we usually discover our fears of rejection aren't as big as they seemed, and we also find a healthy pride in using our voice to take responsibility for ourselves. Here are a few examples of what saying no can sound like. Happy hour invitation. Thanks for including me, but I want to get home for my kids, so no thank you. Peer pressure to skip school. No thanks. I'd be in so much trouble with my parents, it's just not worth it. Asked to lie at work by a boss or supervisor. No, I am not comfortable with that. I cannot do it. Friends call at the last minute, but you already have plans. You'd say, I'd love to, but I've already got a prior commitment. Maybe next time. Every no we practice makes us stronger, freer, more authentic. The best part, it opens up space for our yes to really mean something. Boundaries aren't about pushing people away. They're about creating space where safety, respect, and connection can grow. They remind us, this is me, that is you, and we can still be close without losing ourselves. As we continue this series on boundaries, we'll look at parent-child boundaries, how to love our kids while holding the line, and then we'll move into romantic relationship boundaries and what it looks like to balance intimacy and individuality. So stay tuned, and in the meantime, remember, boundaries are not a wall. They are a foundation that keep you steady while inviting others to meet you in a healthier, more honest way. Until next time, may you be kind to your heart, clear in your mind, and grounded in your purpose. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Heart, Mind, and Purpose. If today's conversation about boundaries resonated with you, stay tuned. Coming up, Dawn will talk about boundaries in parenting and how to love your kids while still holding the line. After that, we'll explore boundaries in romantic relationships and what it looks like to balance closeness with individuality. If you found this conversation helpful, we'd love for you to share it with someone who could use some encouragement. You can also find resources, listener handouts, and more at dawnmariehill.com. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode as we keep exploring how the heart, the mind, and our sense of purpose all work together for a life well lived. Until next time, thanks for listening.